Hello everyone, my name's John Gaydos here at Soul Performance. I wanted to chat with you guys a little bit to give you a kind of a look and a little knowledge about what's going on the exhaust on the GT4 RS, which is behind us here in shark blue Weissach package. First impressions, best Porsche I've ever driven. I'll also say best car I've ever driven. That is high praise, and I expect it not to be quite for everybody, but I am a bit of a track rat, so it's the best freaking car and I love it. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a little insight here. So starting kind of from the front to the back, so very similar to the standard GT4 street car in terms of how the exhaust is set up. You got three sections. You've got the header assemblies that go into a intermediate pipe, over axle pipe there, particulate filter assembly, however you like to term it, and then you've got the factory big PSE muffler on the back, and then those fancy fellas who've ordered the Weissach package, you've got your titanium exhaust tips with the cool little old school, kind of turbofan look to it. So, the headers. You've got primary tube diameter of about 2 inches going into a very short merge collector here where the primary O2 sensor is located, and then going into a kind of a smaller size catalytic converter, and it's got a bit of a sharp angle here, so it's not really utilizing full outer edge of the cat. It's kind of funneling it in more towards the center, so we feel we can do a little bit better in terms of utilizing the scrubbing capability of a higher flow cat with a particular design we have in mind. After it exits the cat, it has a pretty sharp bend here. They're trying to do a lot of stuff at one time. So it goes, this is actually a casted end cap, which you don't see very often from Porsche on exhaust systems. Cast header or turbo manifolds on 992 Carreras and turbos would be an example recently. They seem to be using China for that manufacturing the casted components, as stamped right there and stamped on the factory 992 Carrera and turbo manifolds. Not to say it's not good quality, it's actually pretty good workmanship, all things considered. So this is pretty necessary in order to make this kind of a quick transition and angle and minimize welds and maximize strength and longevity, especially in guys that are tracking their cars. I approve of that. So as it comes out here, you've got about, when I measured this, it was about 2.5 inches or so, which comes out to be about, I think it's about 70 mil or something along those. Not 70 mil. That's 2 3/4. About 65. In terms of millimeters, but either way, it's just about 2.5 inches there as it goes into the over axle pipes. Now this is where things get really interesting. This is very different than the standard GT4, because the standard GT4 has about 58 millimeters in terms of tubing diameter, which is about 2 1/4. These guys are just about 3 inches in terms of OD. Now if you actually take a caliper and measure the ID of these flanges on the inside for the flow path, it's more along the lines of about 2 3/4, which is about 69 millimeters or so. And that goes up over the axles, and in order to make it between the body and the suspension, they squash that tubing down there, and it goes into this big particulate filter canister. Now, there's 2 distinct sections here. You got section 1, you got section 2. On the European model cars, we assume, we cannot say for certain because we are not in Europe, we are here in North America, but on the European models, logically, there are fittings here on this entry end cap for pressure bungs, and this would house the true particulate filter core. So on the North American cars, this first section, completely empty. It is an empty canister here. And that goes into the secondary canister here, where there is a Cat 4 matrix right in there, nice and dense, just like the factory standard GT4 model over axle pipes, you've essentially got cat core assembly here on the North American model cars. And we expect on the European model cars, you also have this right here, but at the same time, you also have this particulate filter. So the North American cars would be a little bit louder from factory than the European model cars, based on the fact that you have only one canister that's full of restriction rather than two. And once you come out of this over axle pipe here at this nice large tubing diameter, here's where things get really interesting. So this is the factory PSE muffler. This is the exact same factory PSE muffler as the standard 4-liter 718 cars. The GT4, the Spider, the Boxster 25, the GTS 4.0s, all of them have this exact same muffler assembly from here in on all of these flanges. There is no difference internally. There is no difference on the tip outlet pipes. There's no difference in diameter coming in. You've got about 45 millimeters worth of valves closed flow path on the top, which is, I would say, just about 1 3/4 inch, and you've got a primary flow path valves open coming through the bottom of about 55 millimeters at this point, which is about 2 1/8-ish. So that's pretty darn small, going from these nice 3-inch OD, 2.75 ID over axle pipes, and then funneling into the old standard GT4 muffler. So these outlet pipe ODs are about 2 1/4, 58 millimeters, the exact same as the standard GT4. So what does that mean? That means that the muffler, more so on this car, has become a bit of a cork on the performance potential of the 4RS using the 992 GT3, where our experience in terms of exhaust development has been a primary flow path of 3 inches has been optimal in terms of getting the most out of that engine. So we've got some pretty big plans in regards to header replacements, over axle pipes to get rid of the particulate filters, and a muffler replacement, valved and non-valved, not just to get more sound level and a different character and tone for those people with those goals, but also to maximize the performance potential out of the muffler on this car, which is now seems to be more restricted. So the bad news is for you guys with the Weissach cars, to reuse your factory tips, you're going to have to dedicate yourself to a flow path of about 2 1/4, or 58 millimeters. It seems 58, 59 mil there, unless you're willing to get rid of your Weissach tips. And if you are willing to get rid of your Weissach tips, we expect the performance potential, if you're trying to squeeze every bit out of this car as you can, to require getting rid of these and switching to a different tip assembly. There is a video. I took a little snake scope and scoped this entire muffler and recorded that, so we're going to tack that on at the end of this video so you guys can actually see what the inside of this muffler looks like. If you've seen my GT4 PSE muffler explanation video, it's identical, except for this section right here, which is simply a single flange connection point and then splitting the flow after this flange into the secondary and primary flow paths. This also, for what it's worth, this connection point here only being a single flange and then splitting the flow afterwards, creates a lot more flexibility into exhaust systems. You don't have to worry about that double flange like you have on the standard GT4s. Now you can mix and match different over axle pipes. You can do resonated, non-resonated, cadent. You can do a muffler system, valved or non-valved. You can now, if you were familiar with the race exhausts on the standard 718 GT4, which was its own dedicated over axle pipe in order to maintain a single flow path, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's the same over axle pipes between the race exhaust and every exhaust system that would be valved, because it's one single flange. which is pretty cool. You can mix and match a bunch of different stuff now, a lot more flexible, and you can kind of fine-tune tone and, you know, sound level and quality and performance to kind of what you have in mind, catering to sound regulations or emissions regulations where you're at. This is going to be a bit more fun of an exhaust platform, we feel, than the standard 4-liter cars before it. I don't want to give away too much of what we have in store, because that'll be its own video of what we've been able to accomplish out of the car, but R&D has been going very well so far on over axle pipes, race exhaust, header changes, and our soon to come valve muffler system. And we're very excited to show you about all that stuff. And be sure to hang tight so I can show you how the inside of the flow path of this muffler works. In a jiffy, valves closed. We'll go through a couple chambers here into essentially a big chamber in the middle here, at which point it comes through a perforated wall and comes back through a tube to the outlet pipe here for the exhaust. And then the valves open is essentially a quick bend right to the exhaust tip. Valves open just like the standard GT4, quite unrestricted, which creates a much larger delta of closed versus open to take advantage of with modifications upstream. You can still maintain the factory muffler valves closed, nice and quiet, with a primary flow path valves open that's quite uncorked. If you change things upstream and maintain this muffler here. If your primary goal is not necessarily maximizing performance of each individual component or reducing weight, as this I expect right around the 30, 33, 35 pound mark or so, that we can reduce some weight. But thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the rest of the scoping of the inside of the muffler, and we'll be sure to post this up in its own R&D thread on Remless shortly, and keep you guys abreast of what we're working on. We're making leap and bounds, and we expect you're going to have fun being a part of it soon. Thanks very much.